Welcome to Around the Region. I'm Kayla Buchanan, and tonight I'm at the Lloydminster Public Library where there are tons of amazing books because on tonight's ATR we are going to meet two local authors. And the first is Ann Campbell, who wrote this book called Just a Bear.
Visits to the farm were his favorite. He heard the cows mooing and the rooster crowing. "Look out for the mud," he called to the boy, but of course, he was just a bear. It's the life story of my father's teddy bear, which is in the Jack Kemp School. The Jack Kemp School was named after him. And I thought the children in the school should know the life story behind that teddy bear because it really does have quite a fascinating story behind it. It's very old. It's over 100 years old now. And so I decided for them to know the story, it needed to have pictures and be made into a picture book.
So with it being a true story, what are the bear's origins? How did your father get him?
Well, my father was in the hospital when he was about 3 years old, and this teddy bear had been owned by wealthier children and had actually been thrown out, or was going to be thrown out. And so his mother was able to get a hold of it and give it to him in the hospital, which is how he got it. So it's actually older than he was. And that's how he got it. And then when this was in England, and when he came to Canada, he was 19 years old when he came to Canada, and he brought it with him, and it stayed in his home then until he gave it to the school when he was 89 years old.
And did he ever mention to you why he had kept it so long, why it was so special to him?
Well, I think back in those days, children didn't have toys or teddy bears very easily, and especially if they weren't well-to-do, and his family wasn't well off. I think his dad was just a gardener, and so they probably didn't have money for toys. And perhaps because he got it when he was in the hospital, and for some reason it was very special to him. And when my brother and I were growing up, we knew of it, we would see it, and I asked my brother about it because he's older than I am, and he said he was never allowed to play with it normally. If he was sick in bed, he was allowed to have it. But it was something that was kept very carefully. It was obviously very special to him.
When your father had the bear, was its name Just a Bear, or was that something that came after?
No, that was the name I gave him, because in the story about him, he tries to communicate with Jack, and then with people in Jack's life, and they can't hear him because he's just a bear, and that's where he got his name. And finally, at the end of the story, when Jack gives him to the school, he calls out to Jack that he'll always love him, and the magic happens and Jack hears him.
And what does the book mean to your family to be able to hold on to this and kind of pass along the story to your grandchildren and their kids?
Well, it's been fun to have for my grandchildren. It was the first book I put out, so it was fun for them to have. Of course, they all have their own signed copies, and I always sign books when I give them to somebody, or if I sell them to somebody. So it's been it's sort of a dream come true for me when I realized that I wanted to make my stories into an actually published book. It was definitely a dream come true for my family, and fun to do, just a new career for me to do.
And it seems like a good choice to make. So far, Ann has published 2 books. The second one is called Just a Party, and she'll share that story when ATR returns.